Good time zone, sweet world. It is Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. Welcome into the Anch Show, a broadcast about the video games industry. Hello, my name's Anch. I am a business analyst. I am a former economic analyst. Currently work in finance, well, in accounting. But God damn it, I want to be a video game analyst. That's why I'm here to talk about video games. Hi, welcome back. It is another week. The point of this show is to go over the headlines, things that caught my attention, although there wasn't too much this week that really stood out. I could think of 5 things to chat about for a little bit here. And yeah, but what's been going on? We spent a lot of time trying to go over Ninja Gaiden over this past week, and that was a hell of a ride. Managed to get through the game. Wasn't able to do it on stream, but was able to go back and complete it and get through the last 2 phases of that whole thing. Today we'll talk about one of the things to talk about is this new Onimusha game that is coming probably in 2026, but there's like some sort of design parallel to think of, or not a parallel, but like some in terms of design, some thinking there and some comparisons to be made with older games in this kind of genre of ninja or samurai or sword combat, difficult sword combat type of game, and what that used to look like and what that might look like in more of a modern time, and with games progressively moving away from, well, I don't know, moving away from being uncompromisingly difficult, let's say. But anyway, Ninja Gaiden, what a game. I didn't know, of course, being a first time playthrough, that if you fail that last boss, it will definitely shoot you out to which is, I don't know, it's like the end of 6-4, stage 6-4. It will definitely shoot you all the way back to stage 6-1, which is horrifying because 6-2 is probably the worst of them all. And just the prospect of having to do that all over again. And then furthermore, if you the game if you beat any one particular phase of that last boss, and you don't reset the game and you work your way back through the stage 6s, it will start you at that phase of boss, but your life won't refill. And so you all of a sudden, if you're going to keep going on the same playthrough, you're going to have to play all those stage 6s a lot better, like almost perfectly, which is just a crazy ask. So of course, like naturally, most people would have just shut the game off at that point and probably didn't go back and beat it, until modern times when you could have save states. So that's, essentially what I did. I got through the first phase and then just save stated it, because it's just going to be impossible to how much time that would have taken. And you get there eventually, but this is the kind of thing that you have to do in more intentionally difficult games like this. Like the intent was, you were going to have this game for a long time, and you might not have many other things to play. And then second of all is that, you're going to have to go repeat things a whole bunch and then learn by repetition. And then, you'll be able to do it. But anyway, so we'll come to that. That has been basically the main thing that I've been doing the last week. Came up with a bit of a schedule change again. So I'm going to continue doing this stuff on Tuesdays, but probably go until like 5 Eastern to 7 Eastern is kind of the thinking. It gives me a little bit of extra time to process the videos and all this kind of stuff afterwards. Also, we'll come back on Wednesday to stream modern video games. Basically try to clear the backlog. Hey, Pawa, how's it going? and we'll come on Friday to play retro, get some more retro achievements. But I think on Saturdays is when I'll be, thinking about long-term projects and what we should be doing here. And I think one of the main things is to get through all the Pokemon games. Maybe not all, but like the main line, or like the main one or ones from a generation, and particularly the retro ones, or what you would call retro now, I suppose. So like maybe Yellow and Crystal and Fire Red and I don't know, Emerald, Black, either Heart Gold or Soul Silver. And maybe that's it. But I don't know. At that point, do you like start to bring in the N64 games? Do you bring in GameCube games? I don't know. I haven't thought about that as yet. Maybe not. Maybe I won't go that far. I think, just with the games that I've named, yeah, like Game Boy to DS eras, just with those games I've named alone, like that's going to take forever. That's going to take like, I don't know how long that's going to take. But if I dedicate Saturdays to that, I don't know. You just kind of chip away at it, I guess. So it's so many, I think you'll find at some point, like I'll just start speeding through dialogue, speed reading stuff, because there's so much game to get to. So yeah, anyway, so that's the current thinking on what to do. But yeah, that's as far as what's been going on. Let's get right into it. Let's get into the news. I have a button for this. I can never find the button for this. There we go. So first headline here is, this is off. I just caught wind of this today, off of Jason Schreier at Bloomberg. Microsoft is planning major job cuts at the Xbox gaming division. This is coming, I don't know, this is follow up to other reporting from Bloomberg saying that Xbox or Microsoft job cuts are planned, aiming at salespeople. Then there's follow-up reporting from VGC that Xbox is planning another round of major layoffs. This is all like they did stuff like this 18 months ago as part of like a major kind of announcement and really some restructuring plan that's going on. So this will be the fourth big layoff at Xbox in the past 18 months, following 3 major cuts last year and the closure of several subsidiaries. Xbox, which produces video game hardware and software, will be affected. So yeah, the indications here though is that it's primarily affecting sales staff. We don't know, like no specific studios are named, all this kind of stuff. So there's nothing much else to comment here. It just sounds like corporate support type of functions that are being centralized, because you'll remember that Microsoft Xbox had come off this Activision acquisition and several acquisitions of studios, and other indications from if you listen to all these other kind of podcasts out here and people who interact with these companies, you'll hear people talk about communicating with different members of different teams to get access to different products and stuff like this. And that suggests that corporate services are not centralized, which would be something that you would do after an acquisition to help optimize how much you're spending on corporate support and shared services, whether they're human resource or technical or sales and support staff, things like this. So it's in that sense it's fairly normal. It's also, this is a company, again, this is a parent company that is very heavily into developing generative artificial intelligence technology and implementing it into all of their software. And so, and implementing that in all kinds of external parties. And so, I mean, if they're doing that, then they're also doing it internally, chances are. And so that is probably part of what goes into, not only are you trying to centralize staff, but then you're trying to optimize how much output you can get from your support staff, and then would also, then if you can get more, then would lead to needing less corporate support staff overall. So that's something to be aware of. Moving rapidly on, there's another article here out of VGC. This is Andy Robinson. Sega had accidentally revealed sales numbers for Sonic, Like a Dragon, Persona, and more. The information came from Reset Era, actually. And so there's a nice kind of table here on the forum that had shown some sales figures, which were then subsequently removed. The key things here, of course, Sonic Frontiers, I think that's 4.5 million copies sold over 1, 2, 3 fiscal years. We have Persona 5 Royal was like the big thing of note, of 7.2 million copies moved over. We only have from fiscal 2020, but I think it was released before that. So I don't know. I don't know how comprehensive these numbers are. The interesting thing here, to me anyway, was that if you look at that trend at the Persona 5 Royal numbers, this includes the remaster version. You'll see 1 million copies in fiscal 2020, then 700,000 in 2021, 350,000 in 2022, and then 1.8 million in 2023, and that coincides with when the game released on multiple new platforms. It initially, I think it was PS3 and PS4, and then it had come out to Switch, PS5, Windows PC, Xbox One, Xbox X and S, and that kind of explains that bump. And that's, I don't know, this whole thing is kind of a little interesting thing just to show you, the power of being on multiple platforms and the importance of being on multiple platforms. And certainly for Sega, which is, of course, a developer that is outside of the hardware business now, and is very much a collection of different of different developers with long history in development. It's important for them to remain competitive and to remain relevant. It's important for them to be out there in front of as many faces as possible. And that means that they need to be on as many platforms as possible to be successful. So that's interesting. If you look at some of the documents that came out of their fiscal year end reporting, which was March 2025, they have this nice slide here on the review of their previous fiscal year. And a couple of things that they cite here is a transmedia strategy progressing. And so they cite, Sonic 3 movie success and opening a Sonic Stadium in Hong Kong and opening a Sonic store in Shanghai. I think there was also article come out recently saying that Sega's opening up a Sega store in Tokyo in the same building as where the Nintendo store is. Sega officially announced plans to open a flagship store in Tokyo, Japan, called Sega Store Tokyo. No details were shared. However, VGC first reported last year that Sega Store is set to open in Shibuya's Parco department complex, the same building which already houses Nintendo Tokyo, the official Capcom store, and a Pokemon Center. Right? And so this whole thing then you start to get the picture of Sega like really trying to aggressively compete with their main competitors at home, which are Nintendo and Capcom. And it helps give context around some of the comments that you saw, some snarky comments around the Sonic Kart Racer launch, and how they were saying like, oh, we're going to be cross-platform, unlike another kart racer game, right? And that game is going to come maybe in September of this year, I think. And so, but you would think by September, maybe some of the hype around the Mario Kart game kind of dies down. And then the hope for Sega is probably that, they get to come in with their karter. And so that should be interesting watch, right? So Sega was the number one publisher last year. I think they were riding off the backs of Shin Megami Tensei and Like a Dragon, and hot on their heels was the number 2 publisher last year in terms of this is in terms of Metacritic score, was Capcom. And so that kind of all goes together to this picture of, you know, these 3 companies that are competing against each other. You know, so yeah, anyway, so that's that for Sega. Just quickly transitioning into Capcom, don't forget that there is a Capcom Spotlight live stream on Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. I will not be able to tune in at that time. Actually, wait, I might be able to. No, if it's 6 p.m. Eastern, I might actually be able to do it. I don't know. Maybe stream it. Maybe do it live. But definitely tune in. That'll be a cool thing. They're going to talk about Monster Hunter Wilds, Resident Evil Requiem. They'll talk about Pragmata, which is what I'm especially excited for. And they'll talk about Street Fighter 6. I'm less excited for Street Fighter 6. I don't know. I tried to bring it to Epilogue Essentials, and you know, base Street Fighter 6 I'm still a big fan of. But fighting games and bringing, you know, character passes either biannually or annually, you know, that kind of thing, I'm just not into it. I don't see the value of buying into those things. If I was to go back and play the game, I would want to just play the whatever regular characters that I have, even though those characters are cool. You know, there's Terry Bogart's there, Mai's there, you know, I think Sagat's coming, you know, like, and that's probably what they'll show some of the new characters, including Sagat. But yeah, it's just, it has always irked me, like, you know, that when you get these games, you do not have access to all of the characters, and you know that the pretty much the expectation now is that you will slowly get characters that will come out over time, and you'll have to pay for them, because all of these games need to extend their ability to sell multiple, like millions of copies, to make up the amount of money that it costs, and then to, of course, get into the return that they're looking for. And so, you know, I see the rationale for it, but am unwilling to feed the beast in that respect. And, you know, of course, I mean, hey, that's the choice. Those are the choices that we make as consumers. So, hey, whatever. But hey, good for them. Good for people who are still into the ecosystem, because I mean, it's a fantastic game, and so that should be cool to see what's coming. Moving on, we have a couple of articles here on the Nintendo Switch 2, you know, that I thought were interesting to note, because it thematically kind of, it reminds me a lot of the Wii U and somewhat of the GameCube. But this is all about, you know, where are the indie games at on the Switch 2, right? And they're largely non-existent, in my opinion. You know, and so this is from Lewis Packwood at gamesindustry.biz. They did an interview with Gareth Damian Martin, who is working on Citizen Sleeper 2. That is a dice-driven RPG in a sci-fi world, an indie title. Largely, this whole article is going over their experience with, you know, not having a dev kit availability, and how this kind of went, right? So, and how this went with the original Switch, where they were talking about, you know, very limited access to the dev kit back in the original Switch days. And even 6 to 7 months after the launch of the console, it was still kind of difficult to secure that access. So what Gowland has thought is to be going on is that Nintendo has been prioritizing titles that would not be doable on the Switch. And so they're looking for if they're, you know, in indie titles, or if they are other, whatever title that they are, they want developers to be prioritized by their ability to make full use of the hardware's capabilities. Right. And so, you know, that is one additional limitation outside of what you would consider to be normal limitations around being able to provision these things because of security, and because you don't want leaks of these things to go out, which could, you know, really harm. It causes a PR nightmare, and it really harms your ability to sell this thing on launch, a properly marketed and you know, hyped up machine on launch. And also, like, could have competitive ramifications for you, because then if your kit leaks, let's say that you had poor controls around the kits, and it leaked, I don't know, like a version of it that is 1 year or 2 years away from completion, leaks somehow. Now your competitors gain access to this information, and now they can better plan, you know, what are they going to do, right? And you see right now, you see with the Xbox handhelds that are coming out, right? And presumably, you know, Steam or Valve thinking about what they're going to do with whatever the next iteration of a Steam Deck becomes. Whether that's, you know, that's not this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after. But so yes, you know, limiting the quantity that of these kits that can go out is important. More important is to have strong controls around who has access to it, how you can track that in real time, and what are the controls around making sure that it doesn't leak, essentially. So the good news here is that the Switch 2 will support Unity and Unreal. There's a game called Survival Kids that is using Unity for the Switch 2 as an exclusive. So that's interesting, to say the least. That is the first Unity game in 20 years as a Switch exclusive. Unreal is also ready to go. Switch 2 provides a real opportunity for Unreal Engine developers, as it has Unreal Engine 5 support in place from the start. That's from Terrence Burns, the co-founder and CTO of the Unreal Engine. He says, there will likely be a few active decisions needed about scaling down in some areas, given the slightly handheld limited spec of the Switch 2, but it will remain it will mean fewer major content changes, which would compromise core game elements. But this is from, as I say, Terrence Burns. This is from Tanglewood Games, but Tanglewood doesn't even have a Switch 2 dev kit. So they're quoted as saying, Nintendo has been keeping their cards close to their chest. We now know of a few other developers who have Switch 2 access, and we are working with them just now, but they've not opened the floodgates. So we're really just waiting for that in terms of how Nintendo are planning on opening the gates to all other developers. We don't know what their plans are in terms of access. We're not privy to what Nintendo are actually planning. And so, you know, you think back to the Switch, and you think about how that was a haven for indie developers, and that, you know, if you had a handheld that had limited graphical fidelity potential, then it creates a space for these kind of smaller developers that don't have the capability to use you know, high graphic fidelity or intensive type of technology, or are just not looking at that in terms of their scope, you know, who are coming to this thing as a machine that the bigger developers who do scope that in, or have the ability to scope that in, can't on that platform, because the platform's not capable of doing it. And that changes in some respects because the Switch 2 it's like a Switch Pro. It has more, potential as a piece of hardware. And so you'll see now, traditional indie developers will be competing against more of the bigger, well-resourced companies on this platform. And not only that, indie developers will then also have to contend with competition on multiple new handhelds because you have, as I say, the Xbox handheld there that itself is trying to bring Steam on there, is trying to basically give you access to as many things as possible as an Xbox, right? And so that will contribute to a bit of a continued discoverability crisis in games. And so it's hard to see how that how that issue will be resolved. And it is, but right now anyway, if we just take it back to the Switch 2, it is kind of it's kind of laughable to me, the what's available there, because it's really a rehashing of all these kind of things that are out. It's just like, oh, hey, better graphics, and I don't know. It, like, if you already own the games, if you didn't have to go out and buy a new Switch version, which for some of them you might have to, that's fine. But when I buy a new $800 console or whatever it is, for us, I guess for us it's $826 here in Canada after tax, all in. You kind of want new things to play on it, and not just Mario Kart. But that's the state of it now. So it's just been really strange to see, right? And it as I say, it kind of makes me think of the Wii U in some respects, just because of how weak that library was and how little third-party support was there. Now, of course, I'm not saying that that's going to be the case here. There's going to be plenty of third-party support, but it's more so around just how protected and how slow out of the gates, I guess, Nintendo has been with getting the people who need the access to the kits to be able to work on this stuff, so that you could have titles on launch. So anyway, we'll wait and see, obviously, what comes of this. I wonder if, by the time that holiday season comes around anyway, that, will we see a bunch of more titles that are like really new Nintendo Switch 2 titles ready for holiday season? That'll be interesting. I would hope so. But we'll wait and see there. Also, Limited Run asked Nintendo to pull Gex from the eShop because it doesn't work on the Switch 2. So this is well, anyway. So there's one thing here to be said about, sure, pull Gex. Nobody play. Don't play Gex. But like there is this other kind of aspect of it, which is, some games that worked on Switch might not work on the Switch 2. You might run into those problems, which is probably another reason why they were so Nintendo, meaning, was probably a little bit careful about how they wanted to go about provisioning access for development for launch titles, just to make sure that things that were to avoid the problem of having things that are designed for both by populations of people that are not privy to how these machines work and what you might need to do to make sure that something that is developed for both consoles, functions both on the Switch and the Switch 2, right? So that's it for the Switch 2 there. Pretty interesting stuff. And we move on to Onimusha. So we come back to this. So this is from Steven Stillo. This is over at GameFile. The header here: the best new feature in Capcom's new Onimusha is not entirely obvious. Onimusha Way of the Sword The developers discussed sword clashes, the reason for making an easier game, and a key tweak to collecting souls. So the there's a couple things that came out of this one. I haven't seen too much on this game. There are trailers and there's stuff to watch on this. One thing is that cloth in this game looks amazing. It does not look stiff, as if it's made of metal. And so there's been a kind of a ton of detail on how things look, but also on animations and look and feel and reaction of the items in the game, in the world. So this is, of course, another Capcom joint. It is being done in the RE engine, like so many things. But in this game, they've really been paying attention to some new technologies that will help describe some of the combat. And so one quote here. Who's this with? This is with the game director, I believe. The game director, who is Mr. Satoru Nihei. Who says, when you have two swords clash together, there's going to be a difference between if you're going to clash near the hilt or near the end. He said that that all of these things are calculated in real time. Which is kind of an interesting thing, but it also makes me think, that sounds really computationally heavy, and that kind of scares me because, I feel like there are a lot of people who are kind of mid-generation in their PC equipment and maybe at a point where they're thinking about, how do I squeeze out as much performance as I can? Because GPUs are friggin' expensive, and I don't know, and first of all, I don't even know if that's the issue. Will getting a new GPU even help? Because if I do that, then I create bottlenecks elsewhere. Okay, so I'll go get more RAM. And then you try to do that, and you're like, okay, well, now my CPU is the problem. What do I do? Oh, well, throw the whole thing out because we've moved ahead in generations, and my motherboard doesn't support the new CPUs. So what do I do? So you get a new motherboard. Now I'll get a new CPU. Now I can get DDR5 RAM. I'll get that. That's more expensive. Now I'll get a new GPU. It's going to be so big. Is everything going to fit? Do I need a new tower? Oh, okay. Let's do a new build now. That's the rabbit hole of this kind of stuff. And so when I see, games like this and people talking like this, it kind of scares me because I'm like, man, is this just going to be a CPU bottleneck? And, is it just going to tank if I try it? But anyway, from a technological perspective, that sounds really cool with what they're doing here. It is going to be their first major Onimusha in 2 decades. It'll be, as I say, another RE Engine game. Development on this started in early 2020. This is from the game's producer, Akihito Kadowaki, Mr. Akihito Kadowaki. They'll have spent a third of 20 years, so almost 7 years working on this. And so this development of this crosses over the pandemic. But I mean, just if you stop there and you think about that, well, that is, there's a little bit of a risk there, right? To be stuck in anything for that much of time in development. Because you could have technological changes, not only in your own engine, but you'll have technological changes in terms of what hardware is out there in the market and what consumers have, and how do you develop around that? How do you make sure that your thing is going to work on all these different configurations? And you also then can run into issues where you've developed on one kind of path, and now you realize that you've kind of fallen behind, and maybe new technologies need to be taken advantage of, and you have to shift into those, and you can just keep almost trapped in a wheel as you keep having to rework. So I don't know, that kind of scares me. Such a long development timeline. But I mean, there's also the reality of kind of explaining this is that there are other priorities. So, I mean, chiefly, if you just look at most recently, you'll see Monster Hunter Wilds and you'll see Street Fighter 6, of course, and the continued development work on Street Fighter 6 in terms of all the new characters, and I'm sure all the balancing that goes in with all of that. And so, you can kind of understand why it's taken a significant amount of time to work on this, and work continues, right? As I say, I think we can only expect this in 2026, and some speculation or rumors suggest February of 2026. And so, they go on to talk about, the decision to bring back the game. It was made by Ryozo Tsujimoto, Mr. Ryozo Tsujimoto, then the head of Capcom's Consumer Game Development Division 2, and lead producer of Monster Hunter. Mr. Tsujimoto themselves is the son of Capcom founder and CEO Kenzo Tsujimoto. Mr. Kenzo Tsujimoto, and has since been promoted to the company's chief product officer. His older brother Haruhiro-san has been Capcom's president since 2007. All of that. The only reason why I read all of that and noted any of that was it made me think of Ubisoft in some sort of respect, and not to make any kind of comparison on the quality of product or the recent quality of product from both of those firms, but just like kind of family roots of the stuff, and how the family roots, those family members hold prominent positions. You'll see kind of a similar thing from Ubisoft, I guess, is what it made me think of. But yeah. Anyway, so as we've been looking at all of this, you also take a look at the sales numbers for games, for Capcom games. So Capcom publishes all this kind of stuff over at their investor website. And so if you go to that link in the description below, yeah, I should put it there. I probably will. You will be able to see, how many copies these things have moved, and you can track down the Onimusha titles. And so Onimusha 1 is 62nd, and Onimusha 2 is at 59th rank. Both of those games roughly selling 2 million units apiece. And so, the other note that I had here that had confused me as to why I had noted this was that Capcom Vancouver, again, has no relation to what we're talking about here, but is a coincidence that Capcom Vancouver had shut down in 2018. But I remember because, last time we were doing this show, and last time we were talking about Capcom, we were taking a look year over year at, since 2018, what they had been doing, and what had been successful for them, to try and explain why it is that they had been on a hot streak, which they have been, right? They've been, ever since 2018, they have been on an absolute roll, and it just hasn't stopped. And so, if I continue in this article, then, we're talking about Capcom, being on a critical and commercial hot streak, boasting 10 straight years of operating income growth of more than 10%, and blasting out news of sales milestones. Resident Evil games released since 2020 at 9.9 million units or higher. Monster Hunter, which they must be referring to Monster Hunter Wilds here, releasing in February at over 10.1 million copies moved. But then also, you look at some of the less successful things, like that Exoprimal game, which was, which I tried, but was kind of like very weird and very messy of a game, but it just goes to show you how I hate to see new games suffer and struggle. you just absolutely hate to see it, because it just, you know, makes it that much harder for new games to be proposed and approved and made, which is something that we should be wanting and celebrating, I think, you know. But anyway, because this can be so risky, and because you can have things that will flop, um, you know, you will go back to franchises that you have, like an Onimusha. But you know, and as we were talking about at the jump, when we were thinking about Ninja Gaiden, it seems like the design ethos has changed a little bit, you know. And so if you go to the YouTube trailer for the game, you'll notice, or one of those, it's a YouTube video, it's a message from the developers. You'll notice, you know, a quote here: "We're not trying to make an impossibly difficult game," right? But what they're trying to do is they're trying to make a game that has moment to moment action that is entertaining for the players, and that allows the players to experience the full gamut of what is being offered in the game. And so, you know, the ethos is, you've come here, you spent your hard-earned money on this thing, which is a luxury item, and you should be able to walk away from it without being dissatisfied from it. And, you know, and so it's important for us to design something that you can finish. And I'm paraphrasing here, but it's important to us for you to be able to finish something and enjoy on your own terms. And so, you know, you think about all these different Souls games, and these Souls likes, and these Souls borns, and whatever. Like I get lost in the terminology. But, you know, let's just say these intentionally difficult and uncompromising games that even themselves have slowly, I feel, gotten a little bit easier over time, just by making quality of life improvements that make the games just a lot more tolerable to play. And these games that, you know, sure, they might give you a little recourse, but they put you in a pretty solid loop that is all about repetition. Repetition means learning. And then, you know, on the 50th time of fighting something, now you've gotten through. And you get some sort of exhilaration from that. If you stick with it. I think I remember one of the Sekiro bosses. Of course, I can't remember any of the names, but I remember like the rush that I got from beating this thing that took me 50 times, you know, is unlike a rush that I've gotten in anything else that I've played. You know, is like really, you know. Anyway, that's why it must be something like hard drugs, even though I've never done hard drugs, but it's like that, right? Like it's a crazy sensation, is what it is. But you know, from the sounds of what they're talking about here, they're talking about a little bit of a different approach than a Soulsborne, and I think that makes sense as something to do, because again, you know, if we tie back to what we're talking about with Sega, and with when you look at some of the reasons behind the success of Persona 5 Royal and all that kind of stuff, and we talk about the multi-platform nature of all these games, then you start to realize that it becomes really important for them to put themselves in front of as many people as possible on as many platforms as possible. And part of that will be, you know, how many people can actually play this game, and how many people are going to be able to have a good time with it, and will not be like, it almost becomes a larger strategic conversation around, you know, we've been doing so well as Capcom as a whole for so long. You know, Capcom, you know, senior management have approved this game, but they want to make sure that it is somehow more broadly accessible to broader audiences, because our reputation's on the line. And we have been very successful over the past 10 years because we've been making good decisions, and because, you know, we've been taking care of our reputation, right? And so you really don't want to have something that comes out there that is kind of juxtaposed against it and can cause kind of a backlash, right? And so it sounds like they're being careful about this, and I think that's the right move. Absolutely. you know, and my hope is that at least that the game will present enough customization options around it so that, you know, a person who is there for the story can go just, you know, enjoy the story. A person who is there for the traditional experience can go have that traditional, you know, hellish Onimusha experience. And a person who is just your average, you know, video game player can go on there and, you know, struggle a bit, but figure it out in a reasonable kind of sense. You know, keyword being reasonable amount of time being spent to have to figure out the mechanics and the patterns and strategies and being able to go through and progress. And ultimately that the average video game player can play this game and finish this game. Right. So that sounds promising. That sounds promising. And we'll wait and see that again, 2026. We're looking for that. And that moves us on to FBC Firebreak. So maybe less promising, although not really. Actually, kind of promising. I hope. I really hope that this game will be okay. You know, it is again, like I've said, I'll say this multiple times. You know, I think when new video games come out and they don't perform great, I think we all lose as people who care about the industry. We all lose because it just makes it that much harder to get any new project that is ambitious and is trying to do something completely net new approved. You know, and makes it even harder to convince audiences that they should part with their hard-earned money to, you know, to try, you know, the new game as opposed to, I don't know, pick one. Onimusha, well, no, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a long story. I don't know. Do I dunk on Assassin's Creed? I don't need another Assassin's Creed. I don't know. Maybe I'll stop there. But hey, so if we get back to FBC Firebreak though, the Metascore has been not so great. So it is right now 64 Metacritic score. The user score is 5.5. Although I guess, you know, I should have done a little bit of a review roundup here. I only selected GameSpot here, but GameSpot gave it an 8 out of 10, but I would guess kind of a qualified 8 out of 10 because there are some significant kind of cons that hold the game back. So Remedy, of course, they're known for story-driven single-player games. In this FBC Firebreak, you are a former pencil-pushing employee of the Federal Bureau of Control, or the FBC, and you're here to, I don't know, combat the hiss and, I don't know, put out fires at the same time. It is so I think it's 3-player co-op. You are, it's another one of these games that kind of assumes some level of Discord usage in the background, if you will, because there's no voice chat. So, and the communication in it seems to be limited to pings, which, I mean, hey, on the one hand, I get it, because I don't want voice chat I don't want voice chat with strangers. You know, that can go so wrong so fast. You know, I don't want people like screaming racist things in my ear, which I'm certain would happen if you have a voice chat that has no controls over it, right? And so if you can't create a voice chat with good controls over it and good moderation and security and all this kind of stuff, then your option is none, right? I'm actually not sure. I should have looked into Monster Hunter Wilds just to see whether they have voice chat in there, but I don't think they do. And I think they really just more so rely on like the whole stickers thing, which is like a fine way to do it, I guess. Like I have a whole wheel of stickers customized to be able to call out messages to people when I'm playing that game. So, but yeah. Anyway, so in this game, there's nothing like that really, and so from the sounds of it, it's very difficult to be able to communicate with people because this is a horde style game. So the hiss is like they're not zombies, but you can think of it like I don't know. It makes me think of Left 4 Dead type of situation where you can have hordes of enemies that are coming up on you, and so it becomes really important in moment to moment to be able to communicate with people and let them know, hey, here's a priority target, here's a bunch of things coming. Can you spray? And some mechanics combine with each other, so you could be playing there might be 3 classes there. I'm not too sure. I haven't gone into the specifics of the game itself as yet. But I know that there are characters with different mechanics that, for example, one character will spray water and the other one can use electricity. And so you'd want to combine those 2 things together to have some sort of shock effect on hordes of enemies, for example. But the main issues that have been coming out of this is kind of a lack of onboarding into learning the mechanics of the game and this kind of stuff. And so when you combine that with horde mechanics and you combine that with a lack of communication, then that can lead to players becoming overwhelmed by enemies really quickly. And then, having a poor experience as a result. And so the team acknowledged problems for the first hour experience, saying that FBC Firebreak's opening gameplay was not a great experience due to a combination of things, including issues with onboarding, poorly explained systems and tools, a lack of clarity as to what to do in the jobs and how to do the work effectively. Developer also said the power fantasy isn't great in the first hours of the game, as starting weapons feel weak. Unlocking higher tier weapons requires a bit too much grinding. And so in this game, they have also kind of if you played Helldivers 2, there's like a war bond is what they call it in that game, I think. And it's like you can think of it like a free battle pass is another way to contextualize that. And so think about earning some sort of virtual currency in this game, and as you play the game, and then being able to use that to redeem things on this pass. But it had cosmetics as well as weapons on the pass, and you'd have to do one before the other. And so players were very critical about that because it would make them unlock things that they don't want so that they can get things that they want. In Helldivers 2, that happens and you have to do that, and they did not change that because, they wanted people to keep playing the game, and they wanted people to keep playing it over a longer period of time so as to give them time to develop other stuff that they could keep then feeding into the content pipeline and keep the user base engaged and all this kind of stuff. But I guess the backlash was so severe here and could have such a significant impact on the player base, which, if you look at the Steam numbers, which isn't going to tell you the full picture at all, there's like 800 peak or something. I don't know. There's like some 800 number that was there. I think the current user might be like 200 on Steam on average. It's not very high, but of course it wouldn't be on Steam because this is on Xbox Game Pass, and is probably, I would imagine, the major way people are playing this game because, if it's on Game Pass and you really wanted to try something, try it, then you're probably going to try it here. Before making that full commitment to buy it elsewhere, if that's what you want to do. So yeah, so they've changed that to where they have separated out the cosmetics from the guns and other stuff that you want on the battle pass. But that creates its own problem because now people are going to get through those weapons a lot faster. And so what happens if they reach the end game without without things to unlock? It can get boring very fast. There's no new rewards, and so now you need more content to be piped in, right? That puts more pressure on them to be able to fulfill that content demand faster. And if you don't do that, then you end up in a case where you can start hemorrhaging users, whatever that count is now. And if you do that, then that's it. You're what do you do at that point? you probably start scaling back how much you're going to support the game. And they've said in some places where they've committed to support in 2025, two new jobs or missions, I guess, are coming in 2025, and with more updates to arrive in 2026. But it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Again, I hope that it I hope that it does well. They are so Remedy is a developer that has many other projects in works. We talked about Control 2 last week, and they are also doing a Max Payne and a Max Payne 2 remake compilation. The game also launched on 2 different subscription services, which is kind of strange. Something I need to look into a bit more. But yeah, it seems like the reaction was that, well, this is subpar, and so it's like users got turned away because of that. And the other thing is that there's just some early roughness to the game that is really turning people away. To which, if you were able to get through the early roughness, then you would probably stick around and appreciate a high quality of game in the mid to end game. But that's really tough because, gosh, who wants to stick around for that? I wouldn't have the patience. I would seriously doubt that I would be able to stick through it. But I've been wanting to check this out. It's just that, as a multiplayer game, I'd be solo queuing, and that can be kind of harrowing. But I guess, a couple of things here. The first thing is that it makes me think of Meet Your Maker, a game that recently, is dead for intents and purposes. They are no longer supporting that game. And that game is a brutalist kind of, I don't know, artistically kind of Quake inspired, I guess, game that had its own unique thing that it was going out there to achieve. It's kind of like a Mario Maker, but Quake is probably how I thought about it. And just could not get traction with garnering enough of a user base and then keeping them around. And so that game had to slowly stop support and eventually announce that they were done with supporting the game. They would receive no further updates. And you just hope that the same thing doesn't happen to Firebreak here, because it looks like a really interesting new title. I think the other thing here is it's been really nice to see how it's been handled from the looks of it by the developers. It sounds, everything you look at, it's very competently and professionally handled, and it gives me hope that they'll be able to successfully resolve the concerns that have been brought forward. I mean, if you think about, because of recency bias, if you think about how this is being handled versus the whole Mind's Eye thing, it's almost night and day. Over there, they're over there blaming staff for being lazy and incompetent from a cadre of management that refuse to take responsibility, I suppose. And that you hate to see that stuff. And it's really all around terrible. But that has not happened here, and I think it reflects the quality of the people who work over at Remedy. And so, and again, it's a new project for them, right? It's a new experience for them. And so there is always going to be some sort of roughness that I think in some respects I would imagine that they would have at least thought that this is a possibility, and that if it happens, then we'll have some plans on how to handle it, contingency plans or whatever. So that's been good to see. And that's that's going to do it for today. That's going to do it for the news. So hey, thanks so much for stopping by, whether live or on the recording. Appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow to continue our playthrough of Tunic. And we'll be back next week, Tuesday, to get back into some more video game news. Yeah. Till then, take care. And we'll see you again next game. Cheers. Bye.